Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Today I actually want to provide a response to a community idea that I saw through a friend on Discord actually, around Nidhoggr receiving an update, receiving a, let's say, a rebalancing. And this is from a People's Guild blog post that came on PeakD or Hive, and I saw this through a friend. And so the criticism is that this one summoner from Rebellion is uniquely vulnerable or limited in functionality, and that it needs a retweaking or maybe a complete overhaul. And I want to talk about not so much the idea specifically about Nidhoggr, but broadly or more generally around changing card stats and abilities after they've been released. And so I'm going to say, if that sounds interesting, stick around. Otherwise, check out the next video on the channel and have an amazing day. Let's get into it. The first thing I should say about Nidhoggr is that I've enjoyed Nidhoggr. I can't show you my I need to re-download Splinter Coach or re-upload my Splinter Coach data, paying for my monthly dues, because I really love learning how these different cards are being utilized under my account by my play. But I've had a lot of fun playing with Nidhoggr. I find, here's the context though. I play at Diamond, middle to high tier Diamond. And I do squeak into Champion. Usually I make it to Champion 3 in Modern League. But the heavy hitters of Modern are a totally different weight class. And I skate into Champion, but on the backs of some of them, let's say, the people that are like me. They don't have all the best cards. They're missing, some really key ones like Tofu I'm missing, and I'm also missing Cryptic, and there are many key cards that I don't have. And so I will beat a lot of you and squeak into Champion on the backs of that. But then I always struggle to get back there, and it's like at the end of the season I'll return the following season. And so that's a bit of the context of where I'm at and how my deck and my play style and my capacity to succeed in Splinterlands, let that inform my comments on Nidhoggr, because I'm not a champion. I'm not a top tier player in this game, but yet I have fun with Nidhoggr. So on the surface of the conversation, I want to say, if we're saying Nidhoggr needs a complete overhaul, or that it's, woefully underpowered, which I've seen feedback from the community around, and that's what the blog post from People's Guild does imply. Quickly, the summary of the proposal is to seek and address concerns surrounding Nidhoggr, a Rebellion airdrop card. By implementing these changes, the community can restore fairness, realign expectations of the airdrop cards, and establish better gameplay mechanics. But frankly, I would say that the summary should speak to the fact that Nidhoggr is not powerful enough. Because it says, look, we're trying to change Nidhoggr. We're trying to create radical differentiation from where Nidhoggr currently is and where it ought to be. And for the context of this video, I should say all this before I go any further. They say to address community feedback and enhance the card's utility, we'd like to reduce the mana cost to 7, which would put it in alignment with the other legendary airdrops, and remove the debilitation, remove the force reduction debilitation, and tactics modification. Allow Nidhoggr to enable 2 monsters with 2+ speed and execute, and or 3 monsters with blast and death blow. So going from 10 mana to 7 would be a huge buff. And then removing the force reduction debilitation would be a significant buff. Although I would argue this is a bit of a niche buff for different reasons maybe we'll talk more about later. This set from going from 10 to 7 mana would be a huge, huge buff. And then this 2 monsters with 2 speed and execute is actually a nerf, because currently it can do 3, while the blast would remain the same. And so I do think this is an even-keeled overhaul for that card. But I guess my comment is not so much, and we're past, this is 9 days ago, so I'm sure the conversation has gone on without my input. But that's why I don't want to specifically focus on Nidhoggr, but more broadly talk about the topic of changing cards after they've been released within Splinterlands, within any collectible card game. But again, with this one particular example in mind, I've found fun and joy in playing with Nidhoggr, again, at that mid-tier Diamond, high-tier Diamond League level. And am I often successful with it? I can't show you my data, but I can tell you that when I was able to see my data, I was below 500 on Nidhoggr. So that is to say, with a pretty solid deck, I have a lot of Rebellion cards, not all of them. I have a lot of Modern cards, not all of them. I have a pretty serious knowledge level about the cards and the meta within Splinterlands, being this content creator that I am and being the person who's been here for 6 years. And yet Nidhoggr under my utilization is a below 500 summoner. But then again, so is Elias Max Pruitt. And so is a Kane, I think. More recently, I've turned things around with the Kane. But my point in bringing that up in this conversation is, does that mean more than one card need a buff? I understand a bit of where People's Guild seems to be coming from is that that Nidhoggr in particular is singled out with the 10 mana versus the 7. And I think that's maybe one of their main criticisms. I have never heard People's Guild speak on this. I've just read the article that I referenced a moment ago. And then I just, I have this gut reaction of resistance towards changing the cards once they've been released. And so while I can see justifications and I can see, I will concede that 10 mana is a great, rise from 7. And while I will admit that Nidhoggr in my utilization is subpar, I still have fun with it. And I guess the question isn't always about how often does it win, but how much fun do you want to use it? Because these assets this game is not just about ROI. Of course, it's a piece of it. And, if you've been with the channel for a while, you've heard me say that it should be fun and rewarding. And I believe it's both. But by no means is this something that I think most of the community or player base are seeking after strictly or exclusively because of that reward or that ROI. I think there is a piece of the collector that's at play. There's a piece of the person who just enjoys the competitive aspect. The joy of the experience is a big part, if not the bigger part, of why many of us, if not most of us, are here. That's I guess the foundation I'm standing on as I say, it's okay, I think, that cards be underwhelming. It's okay that cards not fit in every situation. It's okay that cards, are like some card has to be the worst that are of the cards available. And to describe Nidhoggr in that context is, I think, excessively unflattering. To say it's, to put it at, it is not. It has a real use case. It has a real functionality. It has a real, there's a space and a way and a to have fun with it and to win with it. And I think the same is true with Elias Pruitt, which I have a below 500 win record with. And the same is true with the Kane, which I've turned things around, but again, is below 500. And so do they all need nerfs? And forget about summoners even. Like, what about monsters? I think the same is true with those too. Do we want to go down that rabbit hole where we want to say, some of these promo cards, these recent legends that we've seen released, some of them are better than others. Do they need to be nerfed or buffed? To me, the conversation is interesting because I do like the community coming together and trying to kick around and decentralized governance, which is what we're talking about here. Like the community coming together and saying, hey, let's raise this conversation and see what the people want. And if they want change, let's implement change. That's decentralized governance. And that's part of the beauty of what Splinterlands is and how it is unique distinct from other video games that you might enjoy. That and the opportunity to receive a real reward for your time and effort. Those are significant differences, and we should honor that. We should be excited about those uniquenesses that Splinterlands offers. And that's why I love that People's Guild can and have provided proposals of this ilk both here and before. Like, this is not the first time they've done this kind of proposal where they've asked for, some new element within the game or some new utilization or some new revision to how we work. That is a really cool thing. But I can say that and then still feel that this particular change feels, in my mind, unnecessary. And it's not saying that Nidhoggr is amazing and that you're missing it. It's saying, even if Nidhoggr isn't amazing, why would we need to change it? I can't. My brain doesn't go there. And I can see people who want in the post there was at the summary. This proposal will restore fairness and realign expectations for airdrop cards. That's a very interesting phrase to bring into this conversation. If Nidhoggr is a failure of a card, and I don't concede that, but if you say it's like just unplayable, again, I don't even concede that, but like I know at a higher level maybe it is compared to, for instance, Mylor. Well, maybe everyone needs a Mylor. To that highest level, that seems unreasonable to me. Maybe Mylor needs more counters. That seems more reasonable. Maybe Nidhoggr needs more synergies. That seems more reasonable, because the interesting thing about a collectible card game like Splinterlands is not just that the card itself is broken or useless, overpowered or worthless. There's a conversation around that, like how can it be implemented and utilized within the game. It's not just the card singularly, it's always the summoner with the monsters or the monster with the summoner. And those synergies, especially now that we see cross-splinter combinations, is so much more vast and complicated than it ever was before. And for those reasons, I think when we're talking about how game design may be off in some way, and I think that's really what I hear People's Guild saying with respect to Nidhoggr, the design of that card and therefore that part of the game was not optimized from their perspective. I can see their logic and yet feel that there's a different conclusion to be drawn, which is that complementary, synergistic, new cards could be the writing of that ship. And I think you saw this previously as we might have said the same things in Untamed with Byzantine Kitty, and how crazy and broken and separate it was. And then you might have looked at, for instance, Mimosa Nightshade or Chancius and said like, hey, these cards don't compare. And I think that's true. They have their niche, but you cannot tell me that Chancius is as powerful a card as Byzantine. And yet we shouldn't change Chancius. We should just look at building out the fullness of what the white team offers. And it isn't the True Strike speed kit. And we need to understand that did occur in Splinterlands. If we move forward and we look at True Strike, because that was a big piece of Byzantine Kitty's kit, understanding that True Strike became more and more common. True Strike. Outside of just that summoner. Within Untamed, there was the Gorlodon, but look at all these True Strikers. That's a lot of True Strikers. If let's go modern. In the modern, these are True Strikers. Now, some of these are Chaos, of course, but some of them are Rebellion. And so True Strike was a powerful piece of what Kitty's kit, so was speed manipulation, and we saw more and more of that. Yasik provided +2 speed from the Chaos Legion kit, the summoner. There was definitely more speed and swiftness to come. And we could build this argument out if we want to just look at swiftness and we look at modern. You'll see the Fiends came along in Chaos Legion with Soul Fiend outing that. Look at Supply Runner, which is a beast, and everyone, this is one of the most winningest cards in the game. And so an acknowledgement for what Kitty was capable of doing was made. An observation of how powerful it was recognized. And then complements or synergies or new introductions, let's say, curbed some of that impact. And I think the same can and should be true as we look forward to Conclave Arcana. I don't think the answer is to look back and revise. And one final point before I close here. If the idea from the People's Guild or from any of our community around this issue is to restore fairness and realign expectations with respect, in this case, to Rebellion airdrop cards, and saying, like, they're trying to say, I want to know that a Rebellion airdrop is going to be powerful, exciting, desirable. If that's what we want to restore, we shouldn't go about it by editing prior releases. Why? That would undermine expectations around airdrops. That would undermine fairness. That would undermine why? It would undermine the desired intent, because the idea that they could go ahead and retroactively tweak a card that is either broken or underpowered would leave me with less confidence that the cards I'm buying are going to be the cards I want in 6 weeks or 6 months. If the stats can just be changed, in a relatively easy way with, let's say, some crowd criticism or critique, in a direct way where the stats are changed and revised after issuance, I think that leaves us, with the community, with less confidence. Any of your cards could just be changed in 6 weeks or 6 months. Why would you? Doesn't that leave you with a greater sense of uncertainty and less confidence? In my mind, it would. And so for those reasons, and looking at historic examples of how we've navigated this similar problem with the example of Byzantine Kitty, I feel like the answer is staring us in the face. If Nidhoggr is as bad as they make out, and I do think the data at least points me down that direction, as well as trusted friends in this space who play at a very high level in this game saying that that's the case. Okay. Then what we need to see is complementary synergistic monsters that work within the dragon that will really benefit from the kit provided by Nidhoggr. Something that could augment its utilization. If force reduction is a big concern, what if there's a summoner? What if there's a monster that can counter force reduction or can remove one debilitation? That's literally off the top of my head right now. But you can, with that example, I hope you see, not that I'm not trying to say that's a perfect idea. I'm trying to communicate the reality that with some degree of thoughtfulness and future card design, older cards can be, and the impact of older cards can be changed in a dramatic fashion to the point where if we as communities believe that Nidhoggr is totally unusable at the highest levels, then maybe we isolate and find synergies that are specific for that. And I think the data bears this out, and I think the team looks at this already. So can we trust them with the future development of Conclave on that level and on that foundation? My argument would be yes, we can and we should. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks, guys, for your time and attention. Have an amazing day. God bless.